Here's my email address. You have any comments or questions or want more information? This is from the website concernforpeople.net, which is my website, and it has many different matters pertaining to the U.S. life today. But regarding to what you've been watching, you see the entire section under the menu heading, the U.S. and inflation. This contains many pages, and it should take you at least 4 to 5 hours to go through all the material there. Otherwise, you're not doing yourself a favor. Also, related matters under the menu heading on the same website, International Affairs, in the drop-down menu, there's a page entitled World Graphs. And you will be very interested to see the international implications because the preparations are not that easy. And you have to look at what's going to happen and what is the everyday life like in hyperinflation. And this, as you saw, this particular choice here will show. I have gone through, and you see the various countries here that have had hyperinflation and when. And I have gone through this video here by Argentina is a must-see. It's an hour and 50 minutes long, and it's a complete autopsy of the Argentine hyperinflation. And of course, if you go to YouTube and type in hyperinflation documentary Venezuela, you can see what's happening in Venezuela, where 2 million have left since 2016 because of lack of food, lack of medicine, lack of jobs, and their personal safety. And they've gone to Uruguay. Hyperinflation in Venezuela is going to hit around 1,000,000% this year. And you want to see a harbinger of what's going to happen in the United States for the same reason it happened in Argentina and these other countries. Check it out. But it's going to be far worse than Venezuela. Now, here's some ranges of hyperinflation. You know, Germany, of course, the notorious 3.25 billion% per month. (1982) Mexico, 10,000% a year. Zimbabwe, 89.7 sextillion% per year. Venezuela, 2016, 16,000% a year. This year, it's estimated it'll be 1,000,000%. You've got to do something with your paychecks and your money. You've got to provide and make arrangements ahead of time. As through all those videos, this is a compilation of everything. These are recorded comments, and you can go through. There are several pages of all the comments that people made about problems they were having in hyperinflation, and these are the preparations you have to make accommodations for. This is serious. People's lives are at stake. As one quote says, the majority of the population is on the border of starvation, and many are dying. Another said, situation had become so bad that business was impossible. He did not say difficult, he said impossible. I mean, the circumstances are just terrible, and you can read about this, but one of the major things you have to solve is how to deal with value, not the currency, but value, how to store. And that's where cryptocurrency is an excellent for people who don't have millions of dollars. But I could tell you more about that at another time, perhaps, if you want. But the thing that in all the countless videos that I watched in all these countries, Uh, there was one comment made by one woman. Well, first of all, there was another comment made by first, and that was a video that a citizen of somebody was taking and this haggard-looking woman looked like she was so hungry, and she was on the steps of a public building, and there were people around, and she was clearly, there were problems with the police, and she just stepped in front of the camera, and she said, "Help us, we are on the verge of starvation, we have no food. I don't care if the soldiers take me away." God, it was terrible. But that's typical for a hyperinflation. You can look at the videos for yourself. But one comment I ran across, made by a woman, again, by some person, and she said, for those who made preparations ahead of time, they made out okay. And that's the only time I have heard anything in the countless videos that I heard. And so I have cataloged all these video comments, and these are the problems that you have to solve if you want to make out okay. And there is what to do with value, how to handle value, where to get food, because people buy the food off the shelves before the currency devaluates, for what to do, where to get medicine, how are you going to how to provide an income under these circumstances, how is your personal safety going to be taken care of. There are huge problems to be addressed, and if people would get together and pool their ideas and look at, I have gone through and extracted diligently everything that was said in these, and I stopped looking at videos by these citizens because I wasn't recording anything new. And what I'm saying is that what is here in recorded comments, this is the compilation of everything out of the notes. And I think that if you solve all these problems, that you'll make out okay. And somebody asked me, can you guarantee me there will be bread that I have money to buy, or value to buy a loaf of bread at Cumberland Farms? And I said, look, I can't guarantee that there will be bread on the shelf. But if you make preparations that I'm suggesting and solve these problems, you will have value in some form, whether it's cryptocurrency or Swiss francs or whatever. Because you can order Swiss francs at your bank. You just go to the banker and say, I want $1,000 of Swiss francs, and they'll, at present exchange rates, you'll get 1,000 Swiss francs, and you can stick that under your mattress or in a safe deposit box. And the Swiss government is not devaluating their currency. They don't do that kind of thing. Why not? Well, think about it. Where do the rich store their value? They have to store it physically. They have to store it in some vehicle. Well, where's one of the best places in the world to store it? Switzerland. They're ringed by mountains. Is that any coincidence? It's easily defendable. These super rich people, I mean, we're talking wealth on the order of small countries. And, obviously they got together and they looked for a spot around the world. Where in the world can we create a really good defensive stronghold for the store of value? Well, Switzerland is so obvious. It's ringed, and its defensive position is much better than an offensive position militarily. Well, why do you think the Swiss franc has been so strong since the mid-1700s? You know, these rich people can buy and sell kingdoms and kings and queens and you know, and you know, Switzerland, the Swiss franc in Switzerland has never been hit. Why hasn't it been affected by all the extreme political and wars and everything in Europe and around the world? Is that any bloody coincidence? When you've got people that powerful, money and influence, and they can buy and sell just about anybody or any country they want, isn't that what you would do if you had that kind of wealth? You'd look around and you'd get together with your buddies and say, gosh, we got so much wealth, people are going to want to get to this. How can we do this? How can we store this? Where can we store this? The physical location for this value has to have a physical location, even though it's ethereal in some sense. It's very real, just like heat is real, but you can't catch it and paint it. Well, we can't really do much about these rich and powerful people in the world, as you see, but we can do something to get out of the US dollar, where they have created a siphon, and you have got to do that. And you've got to make these preparations ahead of time, because once this really gets going and countries really start dumping their currencies, and the value of the dollar is going to really tank, as it does. Anyway, this is kind of interesting here. One parting comment to this. Look at this. The U.S. government debt and tax income. Look at the gross public debt. Look at it since 1971. This is only to 2008. And this is the tax income that the government is getting. The question is, how long do you think this can go on? How many more years? We're now 10 years past this point. The present government, Congress, can't pass a budget even for another 2 to 3 weeks sometimes. And it's all based on deficits, borrowing. We don't have the money to create such a budget. This video is about the U.S. and inflation and the coming hyperinflation in the United States. But wherever you are in the world, because of the preeminence of the United States economy and military and political influence, wherever you are, this is going to affect everybody a great deal. China, however, is coming on like gangbusters, and with the fall and the economic hyperinflation in the United States, China will become preeminent in the world and assume the mantle that the United States now has. Thin blue outline is our air supply.
Okay.
This is it. This isn't what this I'm going to present. I'm just showing you. There's all kinds of graphs here. They're all. If you click on any of this stuff, they're graphs. Okay. Now I'm going to start here. Called the essence of the dollar. Now this is strictly economic. It has social implications that are extremely important.
Okay.
But this is the essence of the dollar presently. And We're going to start with two things, number one and number two. And these are two facts. These two facts here are the foundation. And if you don't get these, everything else won't make any sense at all. If you don't get these two facts, there's no point in going on, okay?
Okay.
They're very simple, but I'm just saying that whatever economists you listen to, they don't incorporate these two facts into what they're talking about. And that's why 99.9% of the economists and the government are wrong about what the direction of the economy is. And this is going to be, at the end, we might not get to it today, but probably not. But,
I know.
Okay. But it's important to cover this. This is kind of like the intro, and you can see the importance of it, and then you can see if you want to go on and learn a little more. Because there's something that you have to do something to prepare for what's going to happen. And that's just something you have to learn about. Now, the first one is a fiat currency. And this is a study that I learned about 40 years ago. And I've only found one other person who referred to it about a year ago, an economist, and I wrote him and I said, "Where did you learn that?" I didn't see anybody who's ever known that. And this is a quote, virtually a quote from that study. And it says, all civilizations, that's all civilizations in all recorded history, everyone in recorded history, when it adopted a fiat currency, and I'll explain what that is.
Okay.
When it adopted a fiat currency, every one of these countries' economy ended in runaway inflation. And I'll explain what hyperinflation or runaway inflation is. They found no exception, not one. And from another study, it's clear they must have studied over 3,300 countries in recorded history, okay? Mm-hmm. They never found one exception. Now, a fiat currency, you'll recognize it when I explain it. During the the Revolutionary War, when George Washington had in Valley Forge, and winter was there, and he had to pay his soldiers. But the Union government didn't have enough gold. You see, at that time, you had to have so much gold to have so many dollars.
Yeah, to back up your money.
Right, it's just like a checking account. You had to have that there, and the government abided by that. However...
Isn't that where Fort Knox is, where all the gold is?
I think that's one of the locations. I don't know if that's all, but they don't presently have enough gold to back up the dollar.
All the money that they're printing.
Yeah. Okay. So what the Union government did is, at that time they had no computers. They had a printing press. Just push the button, print out more dollar bills.
So the money doesn't actually have any value. It's just
well, it
paper?
Decreases in value very dramatically when you start chunking out. Instead of having this amount, if you then print double the amount, well, you basically have halved your value of the dollar. Okay, now that's a fiat currency.
Okay.
And every country that has ever adopted a fiat currency ended in hyperinflation, runaway inflation. Not one exception has been found. And you realize that with over 3,300 countries, all the different type of economies, all the economists, all the intelligence, all the military power.
Well, I know that in different countries that money has a different dollar value than if you went into Canada, right?
Well, the exchange rate.
Okay, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in just a second. That's an important gauge. That's something to know about. But in every country, regardless of what they did, after they adopted a fiat currency, regardless, there was not one exception. It always has ended in hyperinflation.
Okay, so what's going to happen when we become a cashless society, Sean?
Well,
we're almost there.
Well, this is in the next probably 5 to 10 years. This is something that is probably going to be developed. What the implications of what's happening? Probably going to develop between 5 and 10 years from now.
I can't even imagine.
No, well, wait. Yeah, you can't wait till you see what hyperinflation actually is. Now, the second thing here is after you get this, that you realize that this is well documented that all fiat currencies end in hyper. No exceptions have ever been found. The U.S. adopted a fiat currency in 1971. It's called the Nixon shock. August 15th, 1971, he signed into law. He then made it legal.
President Nixon?
President Nixon signed it into law that we were no longer on the gold standard. We no longer had to have a certain amount of gold for a certain amount of dollars.
Really?
That's right. That at that moment, that day, that minute that he put his signature on that document, this was when the U.S. adopted the fiat currency. Now, just in turn, you're talking about rising prices, and I'm going to show you why.
Okay.
There always is, even when you're on a gold standard, like in the 1800s. I've seen the graphs. You know, a lot of economists, they look only 5 or 10 years back, and it looks like our economy is doing okay. We have 4% inflation, but when I look for data, I'm going back at least 100 years, and preferably 200.
Okay.
I want a really good overview to see what's happening. And one of the things is when in the 1800s, when they recorded the purchasing price of the dollar, even back then, the prices would go through cycles. They would come and they would go down. A little deflation. It had nothing to do with a fiat currency.
Okay.
There's some kind of a natural ebb and flow in the prices. But what we're going to see here is that there's presently, when you have a fiat currency, the major driving force is this. And
So you're telling me that a lot of people in the United States don't know about the fiat currency.
Right.
Right. They
Right.
don't know about it.
they don't,
Is it a
that's
secret?
right.
Or the government doesn't want you to know?
I imagine there's a lot of both going on.
Okay.
But the major news agencies have always been the last people to come to dinner. I'm talking about.
Okay. All right.
But anyway, back to this 1971. See, this is 1971 right here,
Okay.
and notice this is
The
the
national debt.
U.S. and this is what the government is doing with their fiat currency. Their fiat currency allows them to spend money, spend dollars without having gold backing, and this is what they're doing. Is they're incurring more and more debt each year, progressively more.
Because they don't have any gold to back up their money.
They don't need it.
Oh, they don't need, because they have adopted this.
They made this. It's not moral, but
Wait.
it's legal.
Printing money out for Social Security?
Yeah, everything, the whole budget. When you hear the Congress is trying to make a new budget and increasing the budget a little bit to get by for another 2 weeks or 3 weeks so we can have an operating government,
Yeah.
that's what they're doing. They don't have the money to increase the budget. They just have a computer in the Federal Reserve. A guy sits down and, his Social Security checks, send electronic credits. It's just like printing money, except it's done electronically.
Okay.
Pay Germany. We want to support we send them $2 billion. Just and
Could you send me some?
see,
Could you send me some?
notice the source, the Treasury. This is a government site.
So when they say in the news, Sean,
Mhm.
okay, the government's going to shut down, is that just a threat? Is that just words? Like, is the government really going to shut down?
They're not going to shut the government down.
Okay, so it just, what is it, like a scare tactic?
Well,
to
what it does
scare
is,
the human race?
if they don't have a budget, if they don't approve the budget, they don't have a legal right to print these fiat currencies. So they just stop paying people.
But fiat currency looks like regular money.
Oh, the dollar bill that you hold is a piece of fiat currency.
Okay.
It has a physical, the denomination, the $1, the face value
Yeah.
is $1. The face value here was $1. Here it's $1. But the value of it, the purchasing power, is gone. It's going.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. All
So
right.
and the thing, look at what the government's doing. Do you think they're going to stop? They're addicted. Do you think, I mean, politically, they would have to stop the defense contractors paying them, the entitlements, Social Security, education, all kinds of stuff. You know, the Congress is not going to do it. I mean, you know, they want to get elected. You know, the population would revolt. In other countries, they do revolt. Okay, now here's the answer to your question.
This the dollar.
Here it start in 1971. If you had a dollar, the face value was a dollar, and now in 2009, the face value is still a dollar, right? It's still, but the purchasing power is less than 20%.
Like back in my grandmother's day, she could buy a loaf of bread for a nickel.
Uh-huh.
Today, it costs you sometimes. Well, I can buy bread for 99 cents, a loaf of bread, you know, but that's at Market Basket.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is basically here is that if you were buying something here at a dollar, right here, you're going to have to pay $4 for it.
Mm.
It's basically lost over 25% of its value, which means you've got to pay 4 times as much. This is from government statistics.
Okay.
And you see, this is the number of dollars that they're printing into circulation, and you see they're printing more and more, and it goes around the world and through the U.S. economy.
Somebody tell me that the dollar doesn't have the value.
Yeah, well, that's coming next.
Like me and my friend, we used to joke about it, but it's serious because she used to make comments like, "Yep," she used to say, "Yep, in the future, you could win $1 million, and you're not going to be able to buy too much with that." And she would say that.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's going to be worse than that, actually. Much worse than that, even. Okay. Now, this isn't just. Notice this is from 1913. At 2013, 100 years later, it's worth a nickel.
Can you imagine?
It's lost 95% of its value. There has never been a time, except for this brief period, there has never been a time in the last 100 years when it would be a prudent business decision to hold anything in US dollars. You need to hold it in a different currency. Other currencies are not doing this. This is the American dollar.
Mm.
The Swiss franc is not doing this.
Okay.
And that's coming next. Here, okay, these are inverted here. This is the dollar relative to the Swiss franc, and this is, in other words, if you had a dollar here, it would be worth 4 francs, but here it's only worth 1 franc. In other words, this is just another perspective. This is from the world exchange rate. Okay.
Okay.
That shows that the value of the dollar relative to the Swiss franc has also fallen 75%. It's just another.
So this is happening all over the world?
This is the world price for the dollar versus the Swiss franc.
Okay.
The US dollar is not falling against all currencies,
Okay.
but significant ones it is.
All right.
But this tells you a little bit about how to, because see, you have a savings account, you have a retirement fund.
Yes.
You're holding US dollars. This is what's happening to it.
I know.
This is called the silent tax. And it's a way that government can, even though you have the same pile of dollar bills, the government can extract the value out of it by their deficit spending. And so you hold your savings account and it looks like you have this amount, it's still the same amount, and 10 years later, the government has been able to suck out the value by their deficit by the fiat currency. And it's called a silent tax.
All right, so President Trump thinks he can get the United States out of debt? Is he even trying?
No,
Do you know what else
he's not
doing?
even talking about it. Now, so basically, if you had, this is kind of interesting. So this is what the Swiss, see now, not all currencies are devaluing like the US dollar. This is
I
the,
believe that.
this is the strength of the Swiss franc relative to the US dollar. It has gone from $0.25 now to $1. It has increased by 4 times its value relative to the dollar.
And they must know that by watching the stock market, right? Like the value of money.
Swiss banks manage and control a full 1/3 of the entire world's offshore accounts.
Okay.
They know what's happening financially.
Okay.
They have to know that.
That's what I'm saying. They have to know.
They are the gold standard. They have been the gold standard since the mid-1700s, through all the wars and everything that's happened in Europe for hundreds of years. They know what they're doing. It's not an accident. Their government and their citizens know what to do fiscally and be responsible. They would never adopt a fiat currency.
Okay.
But recently, Zimbabwe, Argentina, and Venezuela, 3 recently in the last 20 years, and they all bit the dust. And Venezuela right now is having terrible times.
I know, I saw that. Financially.
Yeah, oh yeah. Right.
I saw that in the news. Those poor people over there.
But there's something to do, okay? You don't know what hyperinflation is yet. It's just a word, just like fiat currency was a word. But there's something very real and tangible that will affect you. You can't escape it, okay? But that's later, if you want to hear more. And there's something to do about it. There's something you can definitely do to prepare for it. And then, okay, and this is a final graph, I guess.
Okay.
Oh, that's a website, just a website where this came from. This graph here,
Yeah.
this is the national debt.
Hmm.
That's this line here.
Oh, okay.
See, here's 1971, same thing. This is what the fiat currency, this is what the U.S. government has been doing, and it's perfectly legal. It is not moral. You can't legislate morality. This is immoral.
So a lot of people in the United States don't even know that this is happening.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. But the U.S. Treasury does.
Boy, somebody does.
Yeah. But look at the implications here. This is the debt that's being incurred, but this is the income. They don't have this, and it's this percentage. The question: how long can this go on? How long?
I don't know.
Look at the steepness of the
I
graph.
have no idea.
When you see a graph?
And that's only up to 2008.
Right.
We're in 2018, so where's the graph for the last 10 years?
Well, I'm sure that I can find one, but this is what was handy, and I didn't really think it was necessary to go on.
Probably went over the edge.
Well, if you know it's going up here. The thing about graphs is they don't just change overnight.
I know.
When you see a slope like this, it tells you something about what's going to be happening. And look at this. And so the question is, how long do you think this can go on? This is 10 years old. How many more years? Look at our U.S. government. Congress can't make a budget last longer than 3 to 6 weeks right now.
I know, right.
Also, governments around the world are dumping U.S. treasuries.
Right.
What happens when their billions and trillions of dollars come back into the market as circuit? There are more dollars in circulation.
So does President Trump understand this fiat currency thing?
I don't know.
Okay.
This stuff is in public domain. I have no
That's
idea.
true. That's true. The information is out there.
I just found it and put it, I took here, I look, wow, look at that. Well, and look at that, and you start putting it together. Well, what about this? Oh my goodness, and start putting graphs together and information. I'm going, my God, look at this. But anyway, so that's kind of the end of the intro to this.
Okay.
There are some really important things like what is hyperinflation? This is what is everyday life like? That's important. If hyperinflation is coming, what does it actually feel like socially, out, in the environment, the socially, what does it actually happen? And it's and their preparations, and from another perspective on economists, and then also there's cryptocurrency, which you probably maybe never heard of.
Yeah.
But it's going to be vital when hyperinflation, and Venezuela's population is having problems with a huge devaluation. They're turning to cryptocurrencies to preserve the value of their assets. They're not preserving their currency. They're preserving the purchasing power. In other words, if you have $100 worth of purchasing power and you convert it to Swiss francs, you still have the same purchasing power, but it's not in dollars. You see what I mean?
Okay.
The value is different from the currency itself.
All right.
Anyway, that's more, and I really encourage you to pay attention and learn about this, because I talk about this later, and I think that I think we're going to have kind of gentle sailing, maybe a little bit decreasing for 5 years, but within 10 years, I think the blank is going to hit the proverbial fan, and it's going to be a problem. So I think you're
I'm going to be retired and be home.
yeah, well, guess again. If you make preparations, you could well be on the street. I'm serious.
Really?
I am absolutely serious. I have been through this material. I have looked at what hyperinflation. I've watched countless videos, documentaries on YouTube about all these different countries made by citizens that are either making it while they were in hyperinflation or afterwards as eyewitnesses about what happens, and you won't believe what happens. I mean, your personal safety is in jeopardy. I'm not kidding.
Wow, Sean.
I'm saying that because
Okay.
I know it's important. I know you can see that this is totally understandable.
Yeah.
And you can see the handwriting on the wall.
Okay.
I mean, it's there.
So where does my faith in God go?
As the saying goes, pray to God, but roll away from the rocks. And that's my comment.
Okay.
And one note is, as you'll see if you go learn more about this, the government will not help.
No.
The government, in fact, time after time, country after country, the government actually does things that hurt the circumstances for the citizens.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to do a little postscript here to this video regarding the exchange rates that were mentioned between the Swiss franc and the US dollar, and to show you how important it is to know about exchange rates. Americans have very little contact with these, but Europeans and other people around the world, virtually the proverbial everybody and their mother's uncle knows about exchange rates. And as far as I'm concerned, if you are a financial advisor, economic advisor, or a banker, or you're in charge of some amount of money, as you can see here, $3 million endowment or something, you should know about exchange rates. There's just no excuse for not knowing about exchange rates, about the difference that it makes. In 1972, the exchange rate between the Swiss franc and the US dollar, it was 4 Swiss francs to 1 US dollar. If you had an institution or an endowment with $3 million and you knew about the advantage of the exchange rates, and you also knew about the historical weakness of the dollar, you would have converted to Swiss francs, and you would have 12 million Swiss francs in 1972. Now, coming forward into 2017, the exchange rate is now 1 Swiss franc to $1. That means if you were to convert your 12 million Swiss francs coming forward to 2017 to Swiss francs to US dollars, you would have face value 12 million US dollars in your endowment. If you did not do this, you would still only have the face value of $3 million in your endowment. This represents a loss of 9 million US dollars. This is 4 times the face value, 3 times the face value of your endowment life. And this is why it's so important to know about exchange rates and the weakness of the US dollar and the fiat currency that's devaluating it. And it's not over. The fiat currency path with the United States is not at all over. It's going to be more severe. It's still important to use Swiss francs or some other currency besides the US dollar. Now, look at it, something else. And see how marked the difference is here too. Suppose in 1972, when it was 4 Swiss francs to 1 US dollar, you had an employee who had a salary of $50,000 per year. And so you wrote his contract, though, that he was to get 200,000 Swiss francs per year. Now that's the same value because of the exchange rate. It doesn't cost any money to do this. Well, there's a small exchange rate fee, but it's really insignificant to this. You would have written his contract that he would be receiving 200,000 Swiss francs per year. That would be his salary. Well, coming forward to 2017, now the exchange rate is 1 Swiss franc to 1 US dollar. If you were to convert his salary into his bank account, he's getting 200,000 Swiss francs to US dollars, he would actually be taking home 200,000 US dollars per year. And it wouldn't have cost the endowment anything. All they would have to have done is have the foresight to change their endowment into Swiss francs and get the interest in Swiss francs and pay their employee in Swiss francs. If they didn't do that, he would still be getting $50,000 US dollars per year. This represents a yearly loss to this employee of a net of $150,000 that he's out.